Good morning, Scottsville Baptist. It's Tuesday, June 2nd, and I'm sure most of you have got the message that Scottsville Baptist won't be meeting back at church yet, even though we could with 50 people. The leadership felt with the infection rates rising and schools opening, be wise not to rush into this. And with prayer and consultation with other churches, with feedback from you in the church, all seem to agree that this is probably a good idea at the moment. We're getting good responses on the way things we're doing at the moment and are waiting for the Lord on when is the right time for us to meet together again. So you're going to live with the daily devotions and the Sunday morning on the net for a little while longer, and you may find some of the voices changing from time to time. But while the teaching has been great and working well, we're working on how to get us to worship together. Worship and music has other legal rules and regulations. But anyway, back to this morning. We've been dealing with how to put your faith into action with examples from Hebrews chapter 11. If you remember last week, we learned from Abel that faith involves sacrifice, and from Enoch that faith involves walking daily with God. From Noah that faith involves being different from the world. From Abraham that faith means obedience. And then from Rahab about faith meaning taking a risk. But we left out one great man of faith in that list, and that was Moses. And so let's concentrate on him today from Hebrews chapter 11. Let's read from Hebrews 11, 24 and 25, where it says, "By faith, Moses, when he'd grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, and he chose to be mistreated among the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin." And the first thing we learn about faith from the life of Moses is that faith is a choice. Maybe like me, you two battle with the balance between the sovereignty of God and the free will of man. And I've come to the conclusion that both are true. The sovereignty of God means that he is in control and his will be done. We've been talking a lot about that over the devotions over the past few weeks. But I also believe that our free will means that he in his sovereignty has given us a choice to be part of his plan or not. I truly believe that if Moses had said no to God at the burning bush, that God's plan would not have failed. He would have used someone else to lead his people. In Hebrews 11, it says that Moses had the freedom to choose between serving the true God or the gods of Egypt, and between the lifestyle of Egypt or the suffering of God's people. As believers, we too choose where to put our faith. Many of you can remember the day that God worked in you and chose you and called you and planted the faith in your heart so that you could choose, and you put faith in him for salvation and were born again. But we also need faith to choose to follow him daily, especially in the choices we face in life. It took faith for Moses to make those right choices. His successor, Joshua, continues that theme when he said in Joshua chapter 24 and verse 15, "Choose for yourselves this day who you will serve." The word refused is also used in Hebrews 11:24, as well as that word choose. So Moses had to say no to some things and yes to others. No to Egypt with all its pleasures, and yes to God with its challenges and its hardships. And all through the Bible, men of faith have done this. No to the world, and yes to God. In their humanity, there were times when they failed, and Moses blew it a number of times, and we too fail. But Moses always came back to say yes to God. The choice is yours, and the choice is mine today. Yes to God by faith, your will be done, or no to God, and I'll do it my own way. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 26 says that faith is a mindset. It says he regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking forward and ahead to his reward. It is often our minds that influence our choices. And the ESV uses the word there, he considered. The NLT says that he thought it better. You see, Moses' faith was thought through. He weighed it up. He said, following God is of greater value than the things of Egypt. The text says that Egypt was temporary, and the values were temporary, but God's way has an eternal reward. The world wants us to see what we get now, but God's rewards are future. Hebrews 11:39, talking of the great men of faith, says, these were all commended for their faith, yet they did not receive what was promised. God had planned something better. Even the great man of faith, Moses, did not get to live in the promised land. And we might not see the rewards of our faith in this world, but like Moses, by faith, we must ask, what is of greater value, the now or eternity? Hebrews 11:27 says, by faith he left Egypt, that's Moses, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who was invisible. Now there are three lessons from this verse. Firstly, faith overcomes fear. Can you imagine Moses at the Red Sea, and we see that in verse 27, with the Egyptian army at his back and the sea in front of him? Genesis 14:13 says, the people were afraid, but Moses said, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring today. Now we put another verse on the door of our shop at Cascades, and it's from Isaiah 41 and verse 10. It says, so do not fear, I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. You know, fear is a natural human feeling, but faith is God-given, and it drives out fear. The second thing from verse 27 is that it says faith perseveres. If I think of Moses and the struggles he went through in life and the constant uphill that he got from the people, I think my resignation would have been in yesterday. We hit bumps and obstacles and troubles and now viruses along the road, and many throw in the towel. Their faith and belief gets thrown out too. But not Moses. His faith kept him going. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 23 from the NLT says, let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope that we affirm, for God can be trusted. And then on in verse 36 of chapter 10, it says, patient endurance is what we need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. I heard a story once that many years ago, the leaders of a small church in Scotland called the pastor together, and they were complaining to him and said to him, in his last year, there's only been one new convert, and he's just a little boy. Discouraged, the pastor wanted to resign. But you know, it was years later that the great missionary who brought the gospel to Africa, Robert Moffat, gave testimony that he was that young boy who was saved because of the perseverance of that faithful preacher. That verse 27 goes on to say that the reason that Moses persevered was that he saw the invisible. And that's the third thing from this verse. We need faith eyes that look past this physical world and see God working behind the scenes. Hebrews 1:1, which we quoted last week, says, faith is being certain of what we do not see. 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 12 says, now we see things imperfectly, but then we will see everything with perfect clarity. And what I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely. You know, this is what faith does. It trusts God with what we cannot see or understand, and it perseveres to the end. Just a reminder this morning that faith is a verb. Hebrews 11, verse 28 and 29 says, by faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood. And then verse 29, by faith the people passed through the Red Sea on dry land. Moses put his faith into action. He followed God's plan. The first Passover and every year after, it was celebrated in remembrance. They kept the Passover. And many may think it's quite mundane and routine, church and worship every Sunday after Sunday, and it's just too much. Our faith shows in how we keep the days. It's great to have Pastor Steve share the word with us each Sunday on the net, and it was great to have Peter Holness share with us over the Easter period. But it's really not the same as keeping the Sabbath together, celebrating Easter and keeping that resurrection time together. I pray that this Christmas will be a great celebration that we can keep together at Scottsville Baptist Church. Verse 29 says, by faith the people walked through the Red Sea. And probably one of the greatest and most well-known stories in the Bible is that one. But you know, Moses did this not because he was a powerful or a special person, but because of the faith he had in a great God. This same God is yours. He can be trusted. Choose to put your faith in him each day, whatever the obstacles. Keep the faith. And a final verse for you this morning, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58 says, therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, and knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. Bless you and keep the faith.